Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Welcome into the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Here on the GSMC Podcast Network, I'm your host, Brice. Another great show on this basketball podcast we have going for you. We're going to talk about some trade rumors. So we're also going to talk about some news around the league. And also we're going to catch you up on some college basketball that happened this past weekend. And I'm also going to give you some of a little special segment at the end of it too. But we're going to start off with some trade rumors and some things that are happening around the league. We're going to start with the Lakers. Kyle Kuzma is, I guess you could say, on the market. The Lakers are entertaining, willing to listen to offers for Kyle Kuzma. This, to me, is a very interesting decision on the part of the Lakers because a lot of people, or there was a report saying that the Lakers brass considered Kyle Kuzma a part of their future. That he's a part of what they want to do, and he's a part of, the core. People consider him maybe the third scorer on this current Lakers team the way it's constructed. And if they let him go or they trade him, it'll be interesting to see what they get back. I think you got to listen because, in a way, you don't really need forwards, even though you got forwards, and Kyle Kuzma is a forward. But, it really just depends. I feel like it's going to be interesting because I think you'll have to do something a little bit with maybe what happens with Andre Iguodala. Also, it might have a little bit to do with maybe not just Andre Iguodala, but also Darren Collison, because that's also someone else the Lakers are intrigued by and they're interested in. That's somebody that they are targeting to add to the roster to make that final run going into the playoffs. So for me, I think this is very interesting seeing this and trying to figure out maybe why that's the case, why that these trade offers are kind of going in. I know some teams probably would be interested in Kyle Kuzma because Kyle Kuzma is a young talent. He was a guy that maybe potentially could have been traded in that Anthony Davis trade, but was not traded. And now they're thinking that maybe they might trade him now. I think it's going to be interesting to see what type of, just compensation that some teams may be willing to offer. Now, I don't think anything's going to happen now. But maybe when the trade deadline comes up, they might consider it more heavily because that's maybe when teams are more desperate to make a trade. So they might go ahead and say, well, we could just go ahead and get so-and-so, bring him into the team, bring him onto the roster. We think Kuzma could help us out, and then we'll give you this player that you think will help you out, and then, we'll be happy. Because, obviously that's what a trade is. A trade's mainly doing something where you feel like it's going to help you, and it could help us. So you're kind of just on that. We're just trying to do what we have to do to be successful at the end of the day. And I think it's also interesting because, people are going to wonder, does LeBron have something to do with this? Does this have anything to do with the fact that Kuzma's trainer a couple of weeks ago called out LeBron James after the Christmas Day game with the Clippers? Does that have anything to do with Kuzma? Do some veterans not like Kuzma? There's a lot of things that we don't know yet that some people may wonder and question. It's a very interesting dilemma to be in if you're a Lakers fan. I'm sure when you kept Kuzma, you would say he maybe was the best player out of the three in terms of what you saw at that point. Now, obviously, Brandon Ingram's having a balling season right now, so you don't know if that's how it's going to repeatedly be after that, but it's definitely something I don't think they really expected to have happen. I think teams that could probably use Kuzma, I could see the Atlanta Hawks getting in on that. I could see potentially the Orlando Magic. I could see maybe potentially if the right deals are struck in, maybe San Antonio. I think those are all potential places that they could go. All those players would have a need for Kuzma in terms of maybe the future. And it could add a potential star because Kuzma does have that star potential. That's one thing that a lot of people feel like he had is he has that star potential. Because when Kuzma gets hot, he can get hot. And I think with that type of firepower on your offense, it's something that you definitely want to keep and make sure that you maybe have around and have at your disposal at all times. Because if you have the talent, you don't want to let go of the talent that you potentially could have in-house if you're a Lakers fan. And I know a lot of Lakers fans like Kuzma. Even though we may see Kuzma has some wild outfits, he didn't change his hair blonde or whatever it is, and Kuzma's doing all the wild stuff, but you can't doubt the talent that Kuzma is. You can't doubt what kind of player he also is. Kuzma is one of the better players in the game today. As a young player, like I said, he's not any Luka Doncic or Trae Young, but he's still a very good player who can help any team because of his versatility and his shooting ability. So that's definitely something that's going to be interesting to catch up and see what happens over the next coming weeks, getting closer to the trade deadline. If you're a Lakers fan and you're wondering about the future of Kyle Kuzma. In other news, we have some Kevin Love news. Now, about a week ago, there was a report that Kevin Love was back on the trade market as they've been listening to offers for Kevin Love because obviously with the team they have now and the future coming and then Kevin Love's age, you're kind of just like, okay, let's try to see what we can get for him for the future for Cleveland. And the market was slow at first, which is explainable because it's Kevin Love. Because you don't know what you need at that moment. Now, they feel like the market might start to speed up a little bit. And they're trying to wait for a deal. But there is some issues now that is happening with Kyle Kuzma. I mean, not Kyle Kuzma, with Kevin Love. That basically, he called out his GM. He got into an emotional spat with his GM about how he's been treated by the franchise. Kevin Love, I feel like, feels very disrespected by the franchise. He feels very just, he hasn't been treated the best. And he wants out and he wants to feel respected as a player. Plus, also, with the team not going anywhere, he probably wants to start winning. Now, a potential destination for Kevin Love is Portland, because Kevin Love is from the Portland area, and he actually leaked a report, or there was a report leaked that he wanted to go back to Portland to play with Portland and everything. So that's a place that he obviously wants to go to, but we don't know if Portland is interested in Kevin Love himself. Kevin Love is a guy at this point who can still give you about, if he was your third option, about 18-8. I mean, he's a stretch for you. He can stretch the floor for you. He could still be one of the better top end players in the game and really help on a championship team, but he just hasn't gotten along the best with the people in Cleveland. And then in yesterday's game, there was a sequence of the game. It was about the end of the second half. Colin Sexton had the ball and he was dribbling and he had a mismatch on Chris Paul because they were playing the Thunder. And Kevin Love was waiting for it. And I believe they called a play for Kevin Love. And Colin Sexton did not pass it to him. And Kevin Love was shown visibly frustrated because he walked up to the key, basically was calling for the ball, yelling for the ball, then got the ball, then threw a rocket at Osman. Like I'm talking like, you know how like maybe a child is mad and how they throw stuff very hard? He threw that thing hard at Osman. Like that was like, I'm angry. And that in a way, some people might have felt like kind of embarrassed maybe the coach of Cleveland. And basically it just shows Cleveland. I mean, Kevin Love is unhappy. He is completely unhappy. He wants to go. He doesn't want to be there anymore. And he wants to get out of Cleveland. And I think Cleveland has to make a decision because they got to figure out, okay, well, we don't want to just give up Kevin Love for nothing, but at the same time, it's clearly this man does not want to be here. So we don't want a disgruntled veteran in our locker room maybe affecting the young guys, affecting the chemistry within the team. So I think that this is a move that definitely needs to be made. Again, I don't maybe feel like it might not be made till it gets closer to the trade deadline. But when the trade deadline hits, I do think Kevin Love will leave and be on a different team when it's all said and done. Because I just feel like that's the best move. I think that's the best move for everybody, for him to leave and for him to join a new organization and basically end up, just with a new place, with a new atmosphere and a new team and a new organization, a new direction for Kevin Love. Because, he's been in Cleveland since the LeBron days and he had to adjust to being LeBron's third option. And now, then LeBron left and Kyrie left. And so he was the number one guy. But it's just, it's just not working in Cleveland. A lot of things are not working in Cleveland. Obviously, again, they're going in a younger direction, so a player like Kevin Love really isn't a part of your future plans if you're the GM and the franchise of Cleveland. So making this move and trading Kevin Love out is probably the best move for you in terms of just chemistry. You get some assets and other things that can really help out at the end of the day. But coming up next, we're going to get into some more trade rumors. We're going to get more into Andre Drummond, who's interested. I also have a Kyrie Irving injury update for you. And also Vince Carter made history by playing a game in his 4th decade since being in the NBA. Coming up right here.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about trade rumors revolving around Kyle Kuzma and Kevin Love, and Kevin Love's situation also in Cleveland. But now we're going to continue into some more trade rumors and some updates with Andre Drummond. Now, currently, Andre Drummond is having a career year in points and rebounds. He's having a good year for his statistical standards. But obviously the Detroit Pistons, they might be able to make a late run and get into the playoffs as an 8th seed. But right now it doesn't seem that likely. So there is some discussion and there's some thought that, they might try to get some trade compensation for him. So they're talking about potentially bringing in a guy who could help their team. So in order to do that, if you're Detroit, you're going to have to trade probably one of your better players. And I highly doubt they're going to trade Blake Griffin. So they're trading Andre Drummond. Andre Drummond is more of the traditional center in today's NBA. He is not the stretch center, can shoot the 3 ball. He's not that guy. He is more of I'm going to stay under the rim, I'm going to post up, I'm going to get alley hoops, and I'm going to rebound, which is still valuable in today's league. Just in case you want to do a little change of pace or you go against a smaller team, Drummond would be great. One team that has been very much talked about in this trade discussion has been the Atlanta Hawks, as the Atlanta Hawks are looking to get some help for Trae Young. Obviously, Drummond is a free agent after this season, so making a trade like this, they would have to convince Andre Drummond to re-sign with them, which I think could actually kind of help with what they have going on with their young team with Trae and John Collins. I think that, there's also other teams involved. There's about 4 or 5 other teams, I believe, that are interested in Andre Drummond, bringing him into the team. I definitely believe Drummond has a lot of value to a lot of teams that want him. Because Drummond's not a bad player. He's not a guy who's just he's a liability. He's a guy who, free throw percentage wise, okay, you don't maybe not want to have him out there for late game situations, and that's fine. But in terms of every other part of the game, he is a very effective center. Like I said, he's averaging a career high, I believe, 17.5 points. So clearly, he can go get you some buckets. He can score some points for you, and that's what you need, and that's what you want. You want him to be able to score some points for you. And if you're getting a solid 16, 17 from the center, John Collins giving you about 19, Trae Young giving you about 25, that's a solid 3 players for the Atlanta Hawks, plus Kevin Huerter when he has big nights from time to time. And I just think it'll be interesting for the Hawks' perspective. What would they give up? I'm thinking more maybe Evan Turner, Chandler Parsons, and a pick. I think that would be good enough because I think Detroit also has to be realistic here. No one's going to dump the bus for Andre Drummond. But you can get some decent compensation back to still potentially maybe be able to make a playoff run later if you're the Detroit Pistons, because the Eastern Conference is never really over with the bottom of the conference being as bad as it is. But even other teams that could potentially be interested in Andre Drummond, there's always a chance. You never really know with teams who's available, who could get who, all of those things, because that's why the league's so entertaining in that way. You don't really know who could potentially pick up Drummond, And, there's reasons why Drummond also should be traded. I mean, like I said, the team isn't winning. He's a great basketball player, but if you don't have a team that can support him, it's that situation, honestly, like where Chris Bosh in Toronto and Kevin Garnett with Minnesota, where you have a good player, but the team's not winning. So it's like, and it doesn't seem like they're going to win with the player. So is it worth keeping him on the squad? Is it worth doing those things? Is it going to get you to where you want to go? And that might not be the case, Because the thing also about Andre Drummond is, since he isn't the prototypical center, Drummond's probably going to want close to or about the max. And do you, as the Detroit Pistons, really want to pay Andre Drummond the max? That's kind of the question that you have to ask yourself. Do you feel like he's worth paying the max to? A lot of people will probably say, no. Usually in the NBA, someone's going to get overpaid. Someone's going to get the max that doesn't deserve it. Because at the end of the day, you just feel like we probably can't get any better than this, so we might as well go ahead and keep this. But I think that's going to be a key, crucial part for me. I feel like Detroit also has to think about building for the future, which I think is always really the real thing in most situations is you're building for the future. You know what I'm saying? They haven't had any playoff wins in the last decade. They haven't even had any top 5 picks in the last decade. And this is what you consider where a lot of NBA teams don't want to be at, is a mediocre team. And that's basically what Detroit is right now, is a mediocre basketball team. So, it's definitely something, if you're Detroit organizationally, you should trade him. Honestly, even though it wouldn't work in my eyes unless you got a third team in there, maybe you can try to get Kyle Kuzma. Just Drummond, Kuzma, and a third team. So I don't think the Lakers are going to want to take Drummond, especially with all the centers they have. They're like, I mean, unless they feel like they can upgrade at center over what they have currently, but that's kind of how I feel about it. But yeah, that's the update on Andre Drummond and the news on him and the trade requests and Detroit looking to move him. Next up, we're going to talk about Kyrie Irving's injury update. Kyrie Irving has not played in about a month and a half, 2 months, I believe, since the season started, where I think the Brooklyn Nets started off 4-8 with him in the lineup. Then he got hurt with a shoulder injury. Now, he was been pretty quiet about the injury for the most part, hasn't really said too much about it, and some people are wondering why he hasn't said a lot about it, but he finally spoke on his injury and had mentioned in the statement when answering the question is that he might have to get surgery. Now, Kyrie Irving is obviously one of the best scoring point guards or guards in general in the NBA. But he has been injury prone. Even with Cleveland, he was injured. He had knee injuries. He had legs, shoulders. He had a lot of broken nose. He has been injury prone. He has been hurt on a few occasions. He has been injured on a few occasions. He has not always been the healthiest guy. And it's something where you're just kind of like, oh, is he going to miss the whole year? That's kind of the thing. It's definitely something to watch out for. It's interesting because Brooklyn's situation with Kevin Durant not even playing the whole year is that, Kevin and Kyrie, if Kyrie sat out rest this year, could then come back next year. But then if you're Kevin, do you believe that Kyrie Irving can stay healthy for you? Do you believe that you can trust Kyrie to be there through the 82-game grind like everybody else? Because Kyrie has had a lot of injuries, and it is a little questionable because Kyrie has seemed a little fragile. And I think that's a question that has to be answered by everybody involved. It has to be answered by, just everybody who wants Kyrie on their team. And I think Brooklyn has to answer that question now. And then also you got to think about how is it affecting the team chemistry if Kyrie doesn't play for the rest of the year. The good thing about it is all these guys basically played last year together because of the fact that they made the playoffs last year with the team they have. There's a couple of different changes. Obviously, D'Angelo Russell was a big part of that. He's on the team now. And Spencer Dinwiddie has had to take on a bigger role being the star point guard. But it's a question that has to be asked. It's a question that's very curious. It's a question that lingers. And I think if Kyrie has to get surgery and that might cause him to miss the year, it's going to be interesting to see what happens next year, because now even more pressures are going to be on Kyrie and KD to come back next year, stay healthy, and lead the Brooklyn Nets to a championship. And now, finally, I just want to give a shout out to Vince Carter. Vince Carter has played in his, I believe they said, his fourth decade since being in the league. I believe he has played 21 years, and he is in his fourth decade, officially, when the Hawks played the Indiana Pacers. And I mean, that's great. You know, Vince is old. Vince has been in this league for a long time. Mr. Half Man, Half Amazing. You know, it's crazy that he was in that fantastic dunk contest in the year 2000, just about 20 years ago. You know, and he was out here putting on a show, and everybody loved Vince and everything he brought to the teams that he played for. And it's wonderful to see Vince still playing the game. And I mean, listen, he's not what he used to be, clearly, but this man is a legend, a first ballot Hall of Famer in my opinion. And it's just incredible how long he has played. He has played through eras of players. He has played through the beginning of the Kobe era, the beginning of the Shaq era, end of the Shaq era, end of the Kobe era. He's played through literally the end of Jordan's era, in terms of not with the Bulls, but like the end of his last couple of years. He played through the Detroit Pistons and the San Antonio Spurs prime years. He played through all that. And it's just incredible to see. It's incredible that he's still playing this game at the level he's still playing it. But coming up next, we're going to get into some more news and notes. We're going to talk about Ja Morant's great season as a rookie, a wild finish in New Orleans, and Isaiah Thomas fined and ejected from a game for touching a ref. Stay tuned.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about the Andre Drummond trade rumors. We also talked about who's interested in him. Maybe, obviously, the big team was the Atlanta Hawks. We also talked about Kyrie Irving's injuries and how he might need potential shoulder surgery. And also, we talked about Vince Carter playing in 4 decades and how great of an accomplishment that is for a man as Vince Carter's stature to be playing in the league as long as he's played. As that's just a amazing accomplishment on Vince Carter's part. But now we're going to get into some more just news and just some stuff around the league. Now, I don't know if y'all remember seeing it, but the other night, Ja Mourant, while playing the Clippers, put one of the Clippers players, I believe Robinson it was, on skates. That boy fell at him, stared at him, and then shot 3. Ja Mourant has honestly, like I said, he is one of the most fun players to watch in the league. He's improved throughout the season. He's getting better. He's definitely one of the most explosive players in the game today at the point guard position, as every point guard is nowadays. Every point guard now is explosive. And it's just, again, this is why I feel like regardless, unless Zion just has a monster rest of the season, Ja Morant pretty much, I feel like, since he has such a head start, is going to win Rookie of the Year. And he deserves it. He's had a great rookie year. He's done everything Memphis has asked him to do. He's a guy who, you know, he comes out there every day and he competes at the highest level, and he's going to give you his all every time. A lot of people like to call him maybe a great value Russell Westbrook, because of that fact, because he plays so relentless. He plays with constant energy. He plays always going for it. He plays always trying to, you know, just continuously be on top, you know? And I think, again, that's what makes him such an exciting player. And I feel like Memphis has really embraced him because of everything he's done for the team. And even though Memphis is not the best team in terms of talent, they have some young pieces with him and Jalen Jackson Jr. and just other guys that they like. And I think Memphis definitely has a bright future, and I think they found their point guard for sure. He'll be one of the top point guards in the league, I think, someday. And we're going to be talking about Ja Morant for a long time because he is definitely a player who shows every time that he steps the floor, he's coming for you. He's going to be balling hard, and he's going to be playing at the highest level every time he plays. And that's something you can't coach. It's just something that you're born with. It's just something that's in you, something that you feel as a player. And it's just something that you love to see from a young guy like him, because a lot of people at his age, a lot of these rookies are coming out after a year in college, 19 years old a lot of the time. And, you always feel like, oh, they're playing too fast. You can kind of see that with Cam Reddish in Atlanta. He's playing very fast. He doesn't have his feet set. He's playing wildly. That's why he struggled tremendously this year and why people are kind of questioning him. But Ja Morant played wildly, but at the same time, it's like, it's one thing if you play wild because that's just how you play. And it's another thing playing wild because you're trying to adjust. Cam Reddish is playing wild because he's trying to adjust. Ja Morant, that's how he plays, so he knows how to play that way. And I think that's something that can help him. But obviously, he obviously through maturity and more game experience, will learn to pick his spots eventually and make better decisions for his teammates and for himself to help get more W's on the board. Because after a while, he's going to get the stats, but after a while, it's going to be like, okay, so how do I get wins? How do I help the team start winning basketball games? And I think that's something that's definitely going to come for him. But again, especially in a season where your team really isn't that talented in general, it's okay because you know what your team is and you know what they bring to the table. And there's no reason to really push yourself or be overzealous about certain things because you know what your team is, like the Memphis Grizzlies are, you know what they are. And all you really need to do is just make sure you play your game and you play at the highest level that you can potentially play, which I think Ja Morant definitely does every time he steps on the floor as he plays at a very, very high level. Another news around the league, it was a great finish in New Orleans the other night. Bainga, I believe, for the Kings, hit a 4-point play because the Kings were down 4. They hit a 4-point play with about 3 seconds, I believe, to go in the game and tied the game. And then obviously that's crazy because like usually in that situation, those when the team's down by like a certain number of points, especially more than 3, you're always like, don't foul because always there's that fear of what if they get fouled while taking the 3 and they make it 4-point play or potentially getting 3 free throws. So obviously the Pelicans, not being the greatest defensive team in the world, probably not the greatest defensive awareness, also fouled him while he made the shot. So then he tied the game at 4. But then New Orleans on the other end of the court came back, and J.J. Redick, being as clutch as he always is, came back with a layup to win the game. Now, how you let a layup up in that situation is kind of crazy to me. I don't know how you do that. I mean, it's kind of like, well, if you think about it, it's like a layup should be the last thing you give up in any clutch situation. Because that means you basically let somebody get to the rim on you, and that's something you never actually want to do in terms of those type of possessions in clutch situations. You never want to let somebody just get to the rim at will. And J.J. Redick isn't even known for getting to the rim like that. He's known as a shooter. So the fact that he beat you on a layup is also kind of crazy at the same time. But it's something definitely I think that is interesting for me, I think. It's interesting to see that. It was a great game. Those are the type of exciting ends that you really want when you watch basketball. This is why people watch the game of basketball, for those types of games. And it's just really exciting to see. So that was a great game there. And then also, so something happened with the Wizards game the other night. Isaiah Thomas, he obviously was suspended a couple weeks ago for confronting a fan. So he was in this game. The game just started. And he was double teamed in about not the corner, but kind of upper diagonal corner of the floor of the 3-point line. And and the ref was behind him. So when it was over, in a way, he kind of, I guess, gave a shoving motion almost like a shoving motion, which actually hit the ref. And I think the ref thought he was trying to push him, so he ejected Isaiah Thomas. Now, this play is very controversial because a lot of people feel like he wasn't trying to do that. He was just, two people were on top of him and he was just trying to get him off of him. And the referee just happened to be right there. Where a lot of people feel like the referee, he basically kind of did that to himself because he was standing behind him and he didn't move. And so a lot of people were not very happy about the fact that Isaiah Thomas was ejected for that play. I was one of those people. I feel like that's on the ref. You should have moved. Because like if a double team is happening, that is probably one of the most aggressive defensive plays you can have when playing basketball. And if you see that someone's trying to get out of a double team and you're right there, there's a chance that if they're staying on him even a little bit past the whistle, he's going to maybe make a little movement because, he's trying to get him off of him, you know what I'm saying? And then if you're in the way of that, it shouldn't be looked at as, oh, he's trying to get at me. It should be looked at as, oh, he was trying to get off. I was just in the way. And I feel like the referee was at fault there. I feel like he could have moved out the way so then that could avoid the situation. It's interesting because now you kind of feel like, dang, Isaiah's kind of not getting the benefit of some calls. He's not getting the benefit of the league. He's not getting the benefit of the referees because of some of the things that have happened. And I definitely understand where he's coming from a little bit. It's something to me that I feel like is very interesting to see that, to hear that, and to experience that watching the game. Obviously, you could see he was very, not pissed, but very shocked and surprised that he was ejected for such a situation in such a play like that, as I feel like most people would be in that situation. I just feel like, it's just, I think we talk about player awareness, but I think there also needs to be referee awareness. Referees need to know where they are at all times on the floor, what's going on everything, because, sometimes you can get in the way of things. You can get away in crossfire. And if that happened, we don't want you assuming, oh, they're trying to get at me, they're trying to intimidate me, or they're mad about something, so they're getting a little physical with me. Because it was never anything like that. I truly believe Isaiah Thomas should have not been ejected for that play. He shouldn't have been ejected for that situation. And, I don't know what the league's going to do. I don't know if the league's going to fine him or anything, but I definitely feel like he shouldn't have been kicked out of that game. And those are just my thoughts, particularly on that situation. And, it'll just be interesting to see what happens next. But coming up next, we're going to talk about some other news and segments I want to talk about, like Embiid. While the 76ers have been losing, he had talked about how the losing streak was taking a toll on him. Also, Brandon Ingram had made some comments about players getting big contracts, and also who's playing their best basketball right now and during this part of the season coming up.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about John Mourant breaking ankles onto having a great season, having a great rookie year in his first year, and winning Rookie of the Year, and also how Memphis has embraced him as their new star in Memphis. Also, we talked about a wild finish in New Orleans, and we also talked about the Isaiah Thomas controversial ejection that happened this past week, and also fine for touching a referee. But now, we're going to get into some talk about some things that have been said also this past week. And we're going to get into some talk about Joel Embiid. The 76ers won their last game. But Joel Embiid, the 76ers were on a 4-game losing streak. And Embiid said after one of the games that it's kind of taking a toll on them that they're losing. I think that's an interesting comment because, I believe Embiid's first year they weren't good. So I'm sure he was used that year to losing a lot of 4-game losing streaks. It's interesting to hear a player as Embiid's stature say that because, you can understand it. The 76ers have high expectations. They are projected to at least get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And they're considered one of the better teams in the league. So losing 4 straight games can kind of dampen the mood in the locker room a little bit. It can make things a little uncomfortable because you feel like, well, why are we losing like we're losing? Why are we not doing better like the talent suggests we should do? Now, obviously, I feel like the 76ers are still trying to figure some things out. They're still trying to figure out who they are. They're still trying to figure out what they do best, and they're trying to figure out what's best for them. I think that, Embiid, I think, just needs to go through it's just part of the NBA 82-game season grind. Every great team has it. You're going to go through a stretch where you maybe lose 2, 3, 4 games in a row. It's just a part of the season. You take those games, I feel like, and you learn from them and you get better. And then that way, you try to do what you can to never have another 4-game stretch again during the season. And I feel like that's kind of how Joel Embiid needs to take it. I don't feel like he needs to be down about anything. I don't think he needs to look at anything and be like, wow, what's wrong with us? What are we doing wrong? I just think that he needs to come out there and just do what he does best. I think he needs to come out there and just compete at a high level. And I think that for Joel Embiid's purposes and situation, he is very much positioned as the guy who everybody thinks if the 76ers make it to the finals, it's because of Joel Embiid. And Embiid can't let these type of stretches hold you down because he needs to be the best he can be and stay healthy. So then they can make the playoffs. And not only just make the playoffs, make it to the NBA Finals. Because like I said, the 76ers have great expectations, especially with the additions they made of Al Horford and Josh Richardson. Even though they lost Jimmy Butler and J.J. Redick, I think it's one of those things where obviously also the development of Ben Simmons will play very crucial into this role. And I just think that, morally overall, both teams, the team of the 76ers, they just got to ride the ship. And he just needs to keep doing what he does. He needs to keep being the dominant center that we all know he can be. Because the 76ers are too good to not figure their way out of this slump. They probably will figure their way out of this slump, and there probably is absolutely nothing to worry about. If you're a 76er fan, it's just one of those slumps during the season that happens. Really. It's nothing that you should be too concerned about, in my personal opinion. In other news, Brandon Ingram, having a breakout season in New Orleans this year, was asked about some of the contracts that players were getting around the league, and Brandon Ingram was very brutally honest. He was just like, when I see certain people get contracts, I'm looking at it like, how did he get a deal? I'm better than him. We and him could play one-on-one basketball to 15, and he won't even score a point, and I'll score 15. And I feel like it is funny because it's not even like he's the first person to ever say something like this. NFL players, every time NBA free agency comes around, says something like that. Half of these players are role players getting 90, 100 million when I'm a top player at my position only getting 50, 60 million. And they're getting their contracts fully guaranteed where I may only get maybe 2/4, 3/4 if I'm lucky of my contract guaranteed. I think it's definitely an interesting conversation. You definitely, especially with Brandon Ingram, right now he's pretty much lined up if he continues at this pace to get the max contract from the Pelicans this offseason. And so I definitely can understand. I feel like that maybe some of the players around the league, they feel like I'm better than him and he's getting paid more than me. That's why in negotiations, players always want to get paid more than someone else. But in the NBA, that's why they have the salary cap and they have max deals. Because now it's just like, well, everybody can get paid the same amount yearly. And so no one can sit here and say, why did they get paid more than me? I'm better than them. Well, everybody can still get a high pay raise. You know what I'm saying? Where in the NFL, obviously that's different because, every year it's just like whoever got the biggest big contract, even if they're not better, they're going to think they're better and ask for more money than that player. NBA, it's pretty much capped off with a supermax. This is the best you can get. which is, I think you can only get the Supermax after 10 years that you're in the league. So, because Brandon Ingram's going to get that first young player max contract, play that out, and then probably try to go get maybe sign a 2-3 year deal, maybe try to get that, and after that try to get that Supermax deal, maybe do a 2+1 after that second max deal happens, and then after that, and just try to make as much money as he can throughout his career, because he's earned it. Brandon Ingram's had a breakout year. He is in line for most improved player in the NBA this year, and he definitely deserves everything that he has coming to him in a positive way. And, he is the bright spot on the Pelicans, and it'll be exciting to see what happens when Zion Williamson gets back from injury, seeing how they play, seeing how Zion and Brandon Ingram mush together. Because if they like what they see and they're like a very unstoppable duo, you definitely would feel like, man, definitely got to go ahead, give them the max deal. And we have two players that play at a very high level tonight. And I think Pelicans have a very bright future. Obviously, you still got to see maybe what happens with Josh Hart, Lonzo Ball, and a couple other guys. But Pelicans, hey, the record may not say it, but they're headed in the right direction. They have some players and they have some guys that, you can definitely build your team around. And I think it's just important for everybody to stay on top of their game, for the most part, in my opinion. So I think this is a pretty good, I think Brandon Ingram was just being brutally honest when he asked that question. But I do feel like that is sentiments that is felt around the league by a lot of other players also. Now I want to get into something where I want to talk about maybe some teams that I feel is playing some great basketball right now. Some teams that I feel like is just playing their best basketball at this very moment in the season. It's easy to sit here and say, oh, Lakers, oh, Bucks, because they're the top teams in their conferences. But there are some other teams that are also playing at a very, very high level right now. Very high level that I've seen. One of those teams is the Utah Jazz. Utah Jazz is currently on a 5-game winning streak right now, playing some of the best basketball right now with Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley kind of finally meshing a little bit. It was a little shaky at first because, you got two guys who, ball dominant, coming together, learning to play together. Utah really getting their team together. Utah is one of those dark horse Western Conference teams that can maybe do something this season in the playoffs when they get there. And I think they're just catching their stride a little bit right now with the 5-game winning streak. And like I said, they're playing at a high level. And that's what you would expect. That's what you would expect from a Dan Snyder coach team. They're always going to be one of the best defensive teams with Rudy Gobert in the middle, but also getting that extra scoring, I think, is helping them really come together, pick up some pretty impressive wins in the NBA this year, and just be a team that you have to watch out for next year, this year, in the playoffs. And then another team that also I want to give some love to, the Oklahoma City Thunder have won 5 straight also. They're currently 7th. They have a 5-game lead, or I believe almost a 6-game lead from 8 to 7. It kind of shows you where the Western Conference kind of drops off. But yes, the Thunder, a team that a lot of people thought were going to be bad, lottery team. It's 20-15 right now, and they look really good. Chris Paul and Dennis Schroeder are playing at high levels. They look like a great team, a lot of young talent, a lot of talent in general, and just a great job, by Billy Donovan and the staff, man, coaching those guys up, coaching those players up. Got a veteran like Chris Paul showing he can still play. It's great to see those guys playing at the level they're playing at because, those guys are just some of the best guys in the league. And listen, they may not do anything. They might go in the first round, and that's fine. But they're just the fact that they make the playoffs, they have exceeded expectations by far, more than anybody ever expected Oklahoma City to do this year. Coming up next, we're going to switch to some college basketball talk. We're going to talk about the latest net rankings and upsets in college basketball this weekend. Stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Back to the GSMC basketball podcast last segment. We talked about some news and notes around the league, like who's playing their best basketball right now. Also, Embiid saying the 4-game 76ers losing streak has been taking a toll upon him, and also Brandon Ingram feeling like he's better than most of the players getting contracts or the big contracts that you see around the NBA. And he feels like he's better than them and can beat them in one-on-one basketball, which I do believe he can do, by the way. But anyway, we're going to get back into it with some college basketball now. We're going to switch some. We got to talk about our college basketball here. We're going to talk about some of the upsets that happened this past week in college basketball. First upset was number 5 Ohio State losing 2 games in a row now to Wisconsin. The Badgers were 9-5 in the season before this and winning this game. And this is a big loss for Ohio State. I think this loss showed off some glaring issues that Ohio State may have. They definitely have some things they need to work on because, you're a top team like Ohio State and you're losing to 2 teams that aren't, West Virginia is a good team, so understandingly, okay, lost that game, but losing to Wisconsin, who we're still trying to figure out how good they really are, but with this win, maybe a really good team. This isn't really a great thing. Ohio State's biggest issue is they don't really have a strong second option. You don't really know who's always going to show up night after night for this team as the second scorer, and it's really loomed in this game. This was a 61-57 final. Clearly, you see it's not a high-scoring game. It's just Ohio State was really struggling to score. In the first half, they were down by 4. Second half, they had the same point total. That means they weren't able to ever find that offensive punch to help them come away with the victory, and that's led to their second straight loss, which means when the AP rankings come out, they'll probably drop dramatically. After 2 losses, they're going to drop probably to the teens somewhere, maybe even 20s. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how it ends up being for them because that was a big, big loss for them in terms of their tournament hopes. They're going to still make it, but just in terms of seeding, they may be more of a mid-range seed right now, but they can still bounce back. There's plenty of games. Conference play just started. That was a conference game. They'll get another shot at Wisconsin. Another upset was Georgia and Memphis. Georgia beats Memphis 65-62. This was a much-needed win for Georgia because Georgia's a team with about 9 freshmen within the rotation. Anthony Edwards being some people think the number 1 overall draft pick next year, and with a lot of young talent with Tom Crean coaching, this was big to show if they were really a serious team or not. To go and beat the 9th ranked team in Memphis. Now Memphis didn't have their second best scorer in this game; he was out, but This is absolutely paramount for Georgia basketball in terms of a program trying to start becoming more of a reputational program in terms of success and in terms of recruits, in terms of recognition in the country. They want to be looked at as a basketball power. They want to be looked at as a basketball team that you have to take seriously on your schedule, where every time Georgia comes to your building, it's going to be a fight and you're playing as one of the best teams in the country. And beating Memphis was a huge step in that. The Bulldogs in Memphis, man, it was a great game. Anthony Edwards really didn't have a good game. He shot less than 30% from the field. Really, it was just the defense and everybody coming together on Georgia to help get a couple of turnovers down the stretch of that game to pick up the victory. This game was on CBS too, so this also helped with the recognition in terms of a primetime game. And this is just basically you could say almost an audition for Georgia to show that they're ready to play with top teams. And they showed it by beating the Memphis Tigers. And this is going to be fantastic for them coming into the tournament. If they end up being on the bubble, this can help them because the committee can look at, well, they played one of the best, especially if Memphis does not fall off and Memphis continues to be a good team after this. They can say, well, they went to Memphis, because this was a road game for Georgia, and beat them on their home floor. Those types of wins mean a lot, and I mean a lot to communities, and it probably will help, because, their net ranking also, Georgia has not been that high in the net ranking. This will also probably jump them up a few spots, as, like I said, this is a very big win in general for Georgia to get beating a quality team like the Memphis Tigers because of how good Memphis is this year. And then also, in other news and other scores around the league, another upset, or if you want to consider an upset, Florida State, which is 18th, beat Louisville, which is 7th. This is another loss, I believe, for Louisville this week. Also, losing to Florida State. Florida State has a lot of depth on their team. They have a lot of guys. They have a lot of bodies they can throw at them. I think Louisville in this game really just got outplayed. They got outplayed from the beginning, and they were never really make up for it. And it's something that they have to really figure out. Because, Louisville is, like I said, it's the beginning of conference play, another conference game, as you say, as I've been saying. They have time to get back into the right groove. They have time to get back on track and play well. This isn't like, they're falling off. They still have plenty of time to get back into the right stratosphere and end up still being a very competitive team at the end of the day. So I think there's really nothing to worry about here. If you're Louisville, you just got to get some things back going, and they'll be able to pick up some wins. And, you know what I'm saying? They were manhandled by Florida State, but these are the type of games that the new Louisville head coach can take and say, okay, if we want to show that we're a serious team that can win a championship, we need to take these games, learn from these games, and get better from these games, because this is not something you obviously want to continuously have happen. And you want to come out there next game and just continue to play at a high level if you're Louisville, because you're going to be one of the better teams at the end of the season in the ACC. And another upset was Marquette. Marquette upset number 10 Louisville. I mean, not Louisville. Villanova, my bad. Villanova, they upset number 10 Villanova. And this is also a big game. The Golden Eagles really came out and just really whipped them from the start. I think they were up as much as 20 in the game to start in the first half. Marquette just was looked up and never looked back, and Villanova just had a very uneven performance. They were shut down defensively by Marquette, and also Marquette was just hitting all their shots. And sometimes in those types of games, you really can't do anything about that, and it's kind of one of those things you got to deal with. So it's something that definitely is a bit of a struggle. It's definitely something they have to bounce back from. I think Villanova's going to bounce back from it. But this is a big win for Marquette. Again, this is another great win for when the committee at the end of the year looks back, and maybe if Marquette's on the bubble says, well, they beat Nova. Even though this was at Marquette, still a big quality win for them. And then the last upset I want to get to, Oregon losing to Colorado. Colorado, they've really exploded off the gate. They beat an Oregon team that's number 4. And it's crazy because, Oregon is a team that has played very well up to this point this season. And so them coming out with this victory was absolutely huge for them. Oregon had played one of the better teams in the country. And so, like I said, getting that win was very big for them. It was big for what they want to do into the future and helping, contribute to what they want to do long term. And, again, you don't want to sleep on guys like this. Colorado was ranked because they were undefeated. They lost 2 games. Now they're coming back against 2 good teams and winning again. Colorado is a team that definitely I feel like they should definitely get into the tournament, and they will definitely cause some chaos when they get into the tournament when March Madness comes around in a couple of months. Now I'm just going to give y'all the rundown, the top 10 net rankings this week, just to let y'all know who are the top 10 teams. At number 1, San Diego State, still undefeated, 14-0. San Diego State still one of the only top 10 they are 2 of the top undefeated teams in the top 10 of the net rankings, and they're number 1. Kansas, number 2, obviously coming off a good win against West Virginia. They're number 2 is number 3, Butler. Butler just keeps getting better. Butler just keeps proving themselves because, Butler is just a lot. Butler was not even projected to be this good. Butler was projected to finish 7th within their own conference, and now they're 14-1. So clearly Butler was not as bad as people thought they were going to be. And they're pretty much better than what they thought they were going to be. Number 5, Baylor. Baylor, just keeping pretty steady, winning games, 11-1, just doing what they do. 6, Auburn, still undefeated, again, entering SEC play. They're undefeated right now, and they're just going to come out there and just keep playing. Obviously, that's going to be a big matchup when they play Georgia and they play Kentucky. Number 7, Gonzaga, 16-1, playing pretty well, playing Gonzaga. They just picked up a 5-star recruit this week, so that was big for them. Gonzaga, with the program being as well run as they are, they're starting to get these national recruits, and that was big for them to get a top 5-star. Number 8 was Dayton. Dayton's played extremely well. Dayton is a guy, I told y'all, that's a team to watch out for this year in college basketball. You want to watch out for them. And number 9, Wichita State. Another great team, just doing what they do. And then number 10, West Virginia. Obviously losing the game, but they're still playing tough opponents and losing to tough opponents, so you can't be mad at them about that. But coming up next, I'm going to give y'all my starting lineups on both all-star lineups for East and West coming up.
Are you looking to get your college football fixed? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Second, we talked about college upsets that happened in college basketball this past week, plus the latest top 10 net rankings, which is obviously the metric they use to determine from that, or wherever the metrics are, to determine how, the metric determines how good these teams are based off the seasons they've had. So it's going to be very interesting. But, alright, so this segment, I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to give y'all my starting lineups for both Western and Eastern Conference All-Stars. I'm going to tell y'all why, at this point in the season, I think they should be starters. And maybe y'all can agree with me, interact with me, or whatever, in the comments after the show goes off. But we're going to start with the Western Conference. We're going to start in the front court. Now, obviously, the guy that leading all votes that should be in is LeBron James. I mean, obviously, LeBron James has had a great year in his 17th year. LeBron James is one of those guys. He really could just get enough name value alone. Definitely one of the best players in the game still today. I think that LeBron has played extremely well, and he definitely is very much deserving of an all-star spot, in my opinion. There's no reason, in my opinion, why he shouldn't make it onto the team. He would definitely be one of my forwards starting in this game. Because, LeBron, King James, some people or what Shannon say, call him Goat James. He's led the Lakers to such a great number 1 seed record in the Western Conference, so he definitely deserves credit and recognition from that. And also, in my starting lineup, I also say Anthony Davis too, because of the same reasons. He has led his team to a great start. He has proven still to be one of the top 5 players in the game, which is something that some people might have questioned, because Anthony Davis has been injury prone a lot throughout his career. But he's played well, he's done what he's needed to do, and he's played at a high level every time he's been asked. So you can't ask for anything else from Anthony Davis but to continue to do what he's been doing for them. He's almost a walking 25 points, honestly, if he wanted to. A very dominant player, can stretch the floor, get into the paint. I definitely think he's deserving of an all-star spot on the team. I don't see why he wouldn't get an all-star spot on the team, but you never know. Some people may not feel like he's deserving of that spot. I think he's deserving of that spot, so he'd definitely be one of the forwards I put on there. Obviously, I feel like you have to go with Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard, some people may feel like is more of a name value pick because of the fact that he hasn't played in a lot of games. Because I could easily sit here and say maybe a Karl Anthony Towns or a Brandon Ingram, because of the year he's having, is more deserving of it than Kawhi Leonard. But one thing about Kawhi is when he does play, he still does play at a very high level. He still plays at a top level. And that's just something you can't take away from him. He against the Lakers, he showed out both times. I mean, Kawhi Leonard when he plays, he's usually consistent and he usually plays at a high level. He plays at a level that's a top superstar level, and that's why I feel like he should still get an all-star slot in my front court, as he completes my forward. I mean, that's a pretty formidable front court if you think about it, with those three: Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and Kawhi Leonard. And then, I mean, if you had to put somebody else in there, obviously you could easily say like Karl Anthony Towns, maybe a Paul George, maybe a Joker, maybe a Brandon Ingram. It just really depends, on who you maybe feel like is more deserving of that spot more than the other person. Now, guards in the West, obviously Luka Doncic, he's had a great year. I mean, there's nothing you can say. There's no reason why Luka shouldn't make it. Honestly, the Western guards are pretty much easily, these should be the guys, because Luka is, like I said, one of the best up-and-coming players we have in this game. He is one of the best players that we have in this entire league. And he's only going to get better, and he could potentially become the face of the league, especially for overseas basketball players, the face of overseas that plays in the NBA. So Luka definitely deserves this spot. I think he's done everything that you expected more out of him coming out of the EuroLeague. And, I think he's definitely deserving of his all-star spot. Also, James Harden. I mean, James Harden's almost averaging 40 points. How do you not put him on the all-star team? Realistically, how do you not put him on the team? I mean, honestly, this Western Conference starting lineup is very, very tough. It's going to be hard to beat a lineup like this for sure, because there's a lot of scoring on the floor. Every guy can score flawlessly. And, I mean, listen, you may sit here and only say there's only one lockdown defender, two at best, Anthony Davis and Kawhi Leonard, but if these guys put their mind to it, they definitely could be a very formidable starting lineup for the Eastern Conference. Any other guys that who could have maybe had a suggestion, obviously Dolly Dame, Damian Lillard, Russell Westbrook maybe a D'Angelo Russell, Mitchell. There's some guys, Mourant, not gonna probably get in, but you could give him some consideration to be there too. So that's the Western Conference. Now we're gonna switch to the Eastern Conference and we're going back to the front court. Again, obviously first choice is obvious, Giannis. He's having just as well, if not better stats than he had his MVP year. Why wouldn't he make the All-Star team? Definitely want him in my All-Star starting lineup. He is one of the best players in the NBA. He's arguably the best player in the Eastern Conference. This man is a beast. This man is one of the most hardest guards you'll ever guard in your defensive career if you're an NBA player, because of his speed, his athleticism, his strength, his length. And the season he's had, leading the Bucks to a number 1 seed right now, I don't see how you don't put him into the All-Star game. I really don't see how you don't put him into it. He definitely is deserving of this spot because of what he has done. Next, Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid has been the second most dominant player, even though in their head-to-head matchup, you could say Embiid had the better game than Giannis. Embiid, again, as a lot of people consider, you may think Embiid's the best player in the Eastern Conference. And, he's a dominant center. He's one of the most dominant players I think we have in this game today, in terms of he can really go into a game and dominate you if he put his mind to it. He can stretch the floor. He can get in the paint. He has some smooth moves for a guy. He's not as obviously as fluid as Giannis is, but just still as dominant, or more dominant than Giannis. And I think that you can definitely not sit here and say that Embiid should not get this spot. He shouldn't get this spot that he probably feels like he's earned from everything he's done. And I definitely think that you have to definitely have him in your All-Star team, because it's Embiid. Why wouldn't you have Joel Embiid on your All-Star team? That just would not be smart if you don't have him on your All-Star team, in my personal opinion. Now, this next selection, there's a lot of guys who could get this third last spot on the front court. Siakam. But with Siakam being hurt, I could go off what he did earlier in the year and say, yes, he should get it. I think if he doesn't get in through votes, I think he'll get in through coaching. But I'm not going to go with Siakam. You can maybe say a Jason Tatum because of what he's done. You could maybe say a Bam and a Bio, maybe, what he's done. But I'm going to go with Jimmy Butler. I think Jimmy Butler, he's played very well for the Miami Heat. Missed the beginning of the season because of the birth of his child, but I think he's played excellent. The Miami Heat, leading the Miami Heat to, I believe, the third best record in the Eastern Conference. I mean, he's a guy who also, he had to go through a lot of people scrutinizing his decision about going to Miami, not staying with Philly, and it looks great for him right now. And I think he definitely should maybe an all-star starter. In my opinion, he would be the guy I start like I said, closest person to him maybe is Siakam, but since Siakam's going to be out for a while, it's like, I want to award guys who's been healthy and played. I mean, if I go off, like, let's say Siakam averaged 40 the first month. It's kind of just like, yeah, he averaged 40 the first month, but if he ain't playing any other month up to the All-Star break, I feel like we could be giving someone else who's played and still had just as good of a season the chance to start than a guy just because of what he did early in the season. So that's just my opinion. For the guards, I think this is pretty clear for me. My first guard, Trae Young, I feel like he's been the best guard in the Eastern Conference. Some people may push back and say, oh, the Hawks aren't that good, but I feel like at the same time, you can bring wins into the All-Star, but I also feel like you have to go off stats and what you see from the eye test. Because, if a player is averaging, it's like, what if Harden was averaging 40, but they were losing? You're saying he's not deserving of an All-Star spot? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't feel like you could say that in regards to Trae Young. Trae Young has had to do a lot with what he has. Some people are like, oh, he's not a great defensive player. All-Star game, you think, if that's the case, then Rudy Gobert, the all-defensive team, even though half of them could make the All-Star team, should make the All-Star team then if we're going to go off defense. But we're going off stats and by test, and Trae Young passes that. And then my other guard, I'll probably go with Kemba Walker right now, playing for Boston. He's played a great year this year for the Boston Celtics, leading them to a great record, playing at a high level, replacing Kyrie Irving. Some people might even put Kyrie Irving in there just because of name value, but I'm going to go with Kemba Walker as my other guard. But that's all for me today. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. If you guys would please remember to subscribe and leave a review, that definitely helps us. And also follow us on all of our social media at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.